Hey guys, so today we are starting on lesson 2-1 and we're going to be in this chapter talking about converting fractions, decimals, percents, back and forth and doing all sorts of stuff like that. But we're going to concentrate today, 2-1, converting decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals, and today's date's 11/20/19. Now you were taking your test today, so I wanted you to be able to see what your two pages should look like. They should be facing each other. Title the same on both pages, and the half sheet is going to get glued in onto the right side. So I'm going to shift to my left page where we got the title and the date, and we're going to go ahead and start with some a little bit of vocabulary and then a quick tip on how to convert from decimals to fractions and then fractions to decimals. Okay, so let's start with, what do I mean by a rational number? Rational number. So most of the numbers that we study in math would fall under the rational category. So one way that I can remember what's special about a rational is look at the first 5 letters. It forms the word ratio. And what is a ratio a fancy word for? Yup, a fraction. So a rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. In other words, as a ratio. Okay, and that's really what we're going to be showing, is how we can convert numbers to a fraction form in a way. Okay, so what fall under these categories? Well, we've got whole numbers can be written as ratios, the number over 1. And we can obviously write fractions as fractions, mixed numbers as fractions. And then we've got decimals, okay? And we're going to talk today about that. And again, it's just a matter of, do you know your place value columns? All right, so let's talk about the first one. How would I take a decimal and convert it to a fraction? A decimal to a fraction. Okay, so basically with this guy is it's based on place value. And we need to read the number. Now here's what we don't get to do. We don't get to say 4.5 because I'm not reading the number using its place value, right? So I have 4.5, I'm going to say 4 5/10. Well, I just told you the word and separates the whole number from the decimal part. It separates the whole number from the fraction part. So 5/10 is 5 over 10, right? So let me give you another example here. We've got this guy, 0.45, but that's not how we read it. We read it as 45 hundredths because the last digit is in the hundredths column. So then we're going to convert that to a fraction where the 45 goes in the numerator and the denominator is the place value word, 100ths. Okay? Now, once we get there, we're going to simplify as best we can, and I know since these both end in a 5 or a 0 that they're both divisible by 5. That's my start. We'll see what happens. So 45 divided by 5 is 9, and then 100 divided by 5 is 20. So that's as far as I can go. So that would be my final answer. So as a reminder, you must simplify. Yeah. Ratios, fractions aren't ratios or fractions unless it's reduced to lowest terms. Okay? So that's all you do is read it, and that tells you how to write it. Okay, now going the other way is a little bit trickier to go from a fraction to a decimal. Okay, so we have a couple methods, and you get to decide which method you like better. So the first one is going to be equivalent fractions. And remember, equivalent fractions, equivalent ratios. So they may not look the same, but if I simplified, they would have the same value. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this guy. 2/5. Now I want to turn him into a decimal, so I need to have his denominator be a number that you would see in decimal place value. So when I talk about that, I'm talking about tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and so on and so forth. So let's think about this. What's a number that I could turn 5 into that ends in 0? Oh, 10. So if I just multiply him by 2, I'm going to get the denominator of 10. But remember, fair is fair, so we're going to multiply the top number by 2 as well. And that's going to give me my fraction of 4/10. Okay? And then once I have that, then I'll be able to change that to a decimal. So let me write down in words what we just did there. So we either scale up, like I did here. Remember, that means to multiply. And, or, so I might have to do more than one operation. Scale back. So it's just that number playing game. The denominator to become 10, 100, 1,000, and so on. Okay, so let's get back to our number here. So we have 4/10, which we would read as 4/10. And that means I would write that with a 4 in the tenths column. So it's 0.44. Okay? Now, this strategy is a little bit limited. Okay? And here's its limitation. We need to, it works only if the denominator can convert by scaling up or scaling back to a 10, 100, or 1,000, and so on. So if I can't get that denominator to go, this method, out, doesn't work. So what's our other method? Well, you're going to like this one. It's pretty straightforward. Method 2 is going to be divide. Okay, so remember what we have in a fraction. We have a numerator over a denominator. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to take that numerator and we're going to divide it by the denominator. I'm going to abbreviate that to denom. Okay? And the answer we'll get, the quotient we'll get, will be a decimal. Okay? Now, we could get a mixed number if our denominator is smaller than our numerator, so we could get a mixed number. Now, what's fantastic about this one, it always works. I can always use division, okay? Alrighty then, let's go ahead and switch to our next page and we'll do our practice. So what I have here is a place value column. It goes from thousands to hundreds to tens to ones, and then you see the decimal point. And then to the right of the decimal point come our decimal place values, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So anytime it ends with a THS means we're talking about decimal place values, okay? So down below, we've got some numbers we want to practice with, and we are going to, I'm going to give you some numbers and we're going to put them in there. So let's take 8 tenths. So, oh, I'm going to clean this up. I don't like this. Let's go ahead and we're going to make lines here, here. Oops, that's a little narrow. Here and here. Okay, so let's look at that number 5, and we've got 8 tenths. So I'm going to go ahead and place that guy. So let's put a 0 in the 1 spot, my decimal, and then an 8 in the 10th spot. Okay, so there's no tens, no hundreds, no thousands, and nothing that comes after him. Now, do I really need to write all those extra zeros in the front? No, but that's okay. Let's talk about the next one. Number 6 is 28 hundredths. So there's no whole numbers, and there's a 2 and an 8, with the 8 in the hundredths column and the 2 in the tenths column. And again, no tens, no hundreds, no thousands, and nothing that comes after that. And again, I would just write this as 0.28. Okay? Look at number 7. We're going to do that in the 3rd spot. So we've got a 0, a 1 in the tenths, a 2 in the hundredths, and a 5 in the thousands. So that's 125 thousandths. And again, there's no tens, no hundreds, no thousands, and nothing afterwards. And then look at number 4. We have 4.6. Ooh, look at that. We've got a number in the ones column, 4.65. So we'd read that as 4 and 65 hundredths. So no tens, no hundreds, no thousands, and nothing afterwards. Okay, so that's how we would write them in place value. So it says write each decimal as a fraction in simplest form. So let's look at, I'm going to go a little darker on my blue. Let's look at number 5. So 8 in the tenths column would be the same as 8 tenths. The only thing I need to make sure that I do is reduce by 2, because they're both even, and that's going to give me 4 fifths. Okay, that's all I need to do to convert. All right, let's look at that 28 hundredths. So notice we end in the hundredths column, so that tells me how I write my fraction. I'm going to get 28 over 100. Now, you got to figure out what we can simplify by, and I noticed that 4 can go into both of those, so I'm going to divide out of 4. You might have noticed just a 2, and you would have had to take out a second 2 as well. So this is going to give me 7 25ths, and that is the fraction version of that decimal. Okay, awesome. Let's go to the 3rd one. And that was 125 thousandths. So 125 over 1,000. Now, both of these numbers are divisible by 25, so any number that ends in a 25 or double zeros is divisible by 25, We may have more we can divide out, but let's just see what we end up with. So let's see, we've got 25 goes into 125 5 times. Let's see, 100 goes in, or 25 goes in 100 4 times, and there's an extra 0. Oh man, look at that. I can still divide. So I'm going to divide out a 5. And I get that the fraction version of 125 thousandths is 1/8. Okay? So the next one says it takes approximately 4.65 quarts of milk to make a pound of cheese. Express this amount as a mixed number in simplest form. So the 4 is going to stay a 4. So I'm not going to change. I'm going to make this a little darker here. But what I am going to do is read the decimal part. 65 hundredths. Now, I notice that 65 and 100 both end in 5 or 0. That means that they're both divisible by 5. So 4 is still 4. Now, let's see. 5 goes into 65, goes into 6 once with 1 left over, and into 15 3 times. And 5 goes into 10 twice and into 0 0 times. And what I get is 4 and 65 quarts of milk is the same as 4 and 13/20 quarts of milk. Okay? This isn't that bad, is it? Now we're going to go the other direction this time, and we're going to go ahead and write each fraction as a decimal. So both of these I could get into a denominator that's a 10, 100, or 1,000, but I'm going to show you one of each strategy. So let's go ahead and take 3/5 and let's do division with this one. So this is the second strategy. So I'm going to take the numerator, which remember is this guy. He's your numerator. And I'm going to divide him by your denominator. So that's your denom. So I'm going to take 3, and I'm going to divide it by, oh, you know what? I might need a little bit more room. Let me bring that down a little bit. 3. And we're going to divide it by the denominator of 5. So 3 can't go in, or excuse me, the other way around. 5 can't go into 3, so I'm going to put a decimal point, bring it straight up into the quotient, and that allows me to do the magic annex. So 5 can go into 30 6 times evenly. So I can say that 3/5 is the same as 6/10. Okay? All right, let's try the other strategy where I can try to get 200 to become a denominator that is a multiple of, or a power of 10. So let's see. This can go not into 10 or 100, but it could go to 1,000. So what's that going to be? If I multiply by 4, I'm going to get 1,000. So I'm going to multiply the numerator by 4. And that's going to give me, let's see, 804. So I get 408 thousandths. So I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to read that. Oh, let me write it out in words. 408 thousandths. Thousandths. There we go. Woof. So that's how I'm going to write this. The 8 goes into the thousandths. 100, we're going to have 400, so we got a blank there in the tens column. So the hundredths column has a 0, and the 4 goes into tenths. So they together read 408. Now to make it say thousandths, I got to put the decimal point in, so that puts the 8 into the thousandths column. And that's the answer to that one. All right, good luck with this, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye now.